This story was submitted by Brendon. I'm in my early 20s, and this happened when I was about 12 or 13. It was the start of summer, and my mom and I had went to visit my Aunt Heather and my 5-year-old cousin Amanda for a few days. My aunt had just divorced her husband and was trying to get over it. I actually had a very fun time while I was there, as I spent most of my time entertaining my cousin with some of the simple magic tricks I knew at the time. One trick she always loved was a disappearing salt shaker trick. While we played outside, I would always see an old man staring at us from across the street through his window. He always creeped me out every time I would see him, like he was planning on kidnapping us or something. I remember talking to my aunt about him once, and she told me that's just how he always looked. I decided to trust my aunt and put the old man in the back of my mind and went back to playing with my cousin. On our 4th night there, my mom and aunt decided to go out and have a few drinks and a good time, so they had me watch my cousin for the night. I thought it would be a good night, so at 8 o'clock they left. After they left, my cousin and I sat on the couch and watched the movie James and the Giant Peach till she fell asleep. I was in the middle of covering her up when I heard the doorbell and a knock on the door. What the hell? I thought when I looked at the time. 9:45. The doorbell rang again, and this time I heard a man yell at the front door. That ended up waking up Amanda, and I told her to stay on the couch as I went to the hallway to see who it was at the door. I was glad my aunt had a door with a little window on it, as I was still a few feet from the door, and I could see my aunt's ex-husband. "Heather, you bitch! Open the door!" he yelled, as he again began banging on the door. I have 2 other uncles that like to drink a lot, and he was clearly fucked up. "Aunt Heather isn't here, so please go somewhere else," I told him, still a few feet from the door. "Boy, open this door now!" he yelled to me. "You don't live here anymore, so go, before I call the cops," I yelled back at him, hoping that the threat of the cops would at least make him calm down and stop yelling. It was at this time Amanda came into the hallway to see what all the yelling was about. As soon as he saw his daughter, he began to yell out random stuff while still trying to get into the house. He finally punched through the window, and I freaked. I quickly grabbed my cousin, who started to cry, and ran to the back of the house and into the kitchen, where we got into a cabinet to hide. I'm pretty big for my age, so getting under a shelf in an already small cabinet with my cousin on my lap wasn't easy. As soon as I shut the cabinet door, I heard the front door unlock and slam open. I somehow managed to pull out my pocket knife, and in my head I could only think, if he opens this door, I at least need to stab him in his leg and get Amanda out of here. That's when we heard yelling again, and then 3 gunshots. I was on the verge of crying, as my cousin started to pee on me when she heard the shots. We were in there for about 7 minutes before we heard footsteps in the kitchen and the door was opened. My cousin screamed, and I was slightly blinded by the light from the kitchen, but I still swung my knife, trying my best to at least hurt him. The next few minutes are a bit of a haze, but from what my mom told me, I tried to stab a cop, and they had to yank me and my cousin out to disarm me and hold me down till I calmed down to realize they were cops. My mom also told me what happened after we ran to hide. Apparently when the ex showed up, the old man across the street called the cops and grabbed his gun. The old man only wanted to scare the ex, but somehow the gun was taken from him and the old man got shot 3 times before my aunt's ex ran off. Apparently my aunt had asked the old man to keep a watch at the house, just in case someone strange came to the house. Luckily, the ex was arrested a few hours later that night to everyone's delight. Sadly though, the old man passed away from his injuries on his way to the hospital. I spent the rest of the summer with my aunt and cousin, helping them out as best I could, and every summer since then, I've always made sure to go see them. This story was submitted by Dawn. I'm a 27-year-old female. At the time this took place, I was about 23 or 24. I've had the same job for roughly 8 years as a receptionist, and I was living with a roommate at the time. I should probably mention I'm visually impaired, though not completely blind. On this particular day, I got off the bus at a stop near my house after a relatively normal workday. Nothing too eventful. Shortly after getting off the bus and making my way home, I noticed a white truck driving alongside me. At first, I didn't think much of it, as I brushed it off as a truck wanting to pass me and carry on to its destination. It wasn't until I got to my house that I started to get the serious creeps. As I approached my front steps, I look back and see the white truck parked right outside my freaking place. To make matters worse, the driver shuts off the truck, gets out, and proceeds to talk to me. At first, he was only making small talk, saying hi and whatnot. I simply responded with a quick hi, as to not come off being rude. He then proceeds to ask me if I'm dating anyone, how old I am, and asking if I like black guys, and if I want to get in his truck and go for a ride with him. He then goes on to say he wishes someone else was here to introduce us under similar circumstances. It was then that the full extent of the situation hit me. I now realize that this fucking creepo followed me all the way home from work, or at least he knows the stop I get off. He knows the general area I work, and exactly where I live. My survival instinct pretty much took over from this point, once I realized how scary and just plain wrong this situation really was. I made up a lie and told him I was married, and that if he didn't get the hell off my driveway right now, my husband would come out and deal with him. After I told him I was married, I half expected him to come up the stairs, grab me, and throw me into his truck, never to be seen again. Instead, he simply muttered, "I'm not surprised," and got back in his truck. He drove off as I put my key in the door, went inside, and told my roomie what happened. This could have ended much, much worse, though I've never forgotten it to this day. Since then, I'm very aware of my surroundings, and anytime someone passes me, I like to make damn sure that they're actually passing me, not stalking me. This story was submitted by an anonymous viewer. This happened roughly 8 years ago. I was 19, turning 20. I've never been a small guy. I've always prided myself with the commitment I gave to the gym. After being graduated from high school for over a year and a half, I lived a pretty sedentary life, so I gained a bit of weight, but I wasn't weak by any means. I had just moved into my first place. It was a tiny basement suite with 1 bedroom, but as tiny as it was, I loved it. The guy upstairs was usually out partying or whatnot, leaving his girlfriend and daughter to pretty much be there on their own for quite some time, so I got to know them quite well. I decided one night to go to a party with the woman's boyfriend, as I was tired of being a hermit and staying home alone all night watching movies. I was never the most popular guy in town, so I spent most of my time by myself, but this gave me the opportunity to get out and make friends. This turned out to be a mistake I wish I never made. We get to the party. Everything is going good. At first I was just enjoying my own company, as being more of a loner. I was pretty socially awkward, but a few drinks changed that. Being from a small town, everyone would party at this abandoned mine shaft. We'd have bonfires and drinks, and the cops would never bother us. I had had a few drinks at this point, and I was feeling pretty buzzed and much more social, so I began talking to anyone and everyone there. I made a few friends, and all went well. When the night was coming to an end, we all packed up and went home. The next day, I received a message from a guy I had met at the party. He said he wanted to hang out, and I saw no harm in this. It got me out of my place, and I saw it as an opportunity to expand my circle of friends. We ended up becoming good friends, and hanging out quite a bit over the span of 2 months. But this is where it gets a bit weird. I started working a lot, and the guy mentioned started calling a lot. always wanting to hang out, which at the time was hard for me as I worked 12-hour days and pretty much came home to eat, shower, and sleep. On one of my next days off, I was visiting the people upstairs before going to my parents' house for supper. My neighbor, Ron, told me that the guy I've been hanging out with was his brother, and that he's been struggling with schizophrenia and bipolar as long as Ron could remember. He was pretty mentally unstable, but with medication, he has been able to cope and lead a somewhat normal life. I didn't know what to say. I remember thinking to myself, I really know how to pick my friends. Good going. Fast forward 2 hours. I'm at my parents' house and my dad is working late, so it's just my mom, sister, and me eating supper and watching movies. When all is finished and I'm about to leave, we notice a truck sitting and waiting outside my parents' house. My dad is still not home, and there's no way in hell I was about to leave the two most important women in my life alone when this is happening. I immediately went into defensive mode, and my sister and mom were terrified and didn't know what to do. After about 3 hours, the truck leaves, and my mom calls the cops. Being a block away from home, I walk home, leaving my vehicle in my parents' driveway, in hopes that it would deter any further action. I get home and notice a letter on my door. It read, "Stop ignoring me. I thought we were friends." I was extremely freaked out. To add the icing to the cake, the cops came by the next day and told me that when they pulled the truck over, it was Ron's brother. From what they gathered, he was waiting for me, and when I didn't come out, he tried to talk to me telepathically. But after that didn't work, he left. They said he's been off his medication for a month and a half, and that he had a machete and a pistol under his seat. I gave them the note I found on the door. I don't know what happened after that, but I haven't seen him since, and have since moved from there. I still can't help but think of what he was planning on doing, or how close I had been to being killed. Like I said, I'm a big guy, but I can't stop a bullet. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. So the first story, I was really sad to hear that the old man ended up losing his life. He truly is a hero. There's really not much else I can say about that story. It's kind of self-explanatory, and it ended in a pretty sad way. At least the guy was caught shortly after. For the second story, putting myself in the perspective of the person writing the story, I could see how that would be very creepy. You have a dude you don't know following you all the way home, and then just getting out and asking you questions. From a guy's perspective, he could have just been actually legitimate asking for a date, but the way he went about it was a lot more creepy than it should have been. Now that's not to say he didn't have anything bad in mind, but at least he left when you mentioned that you had a husband, whether it from fear or from the fact that he actually was trying to ask you out. At least he was gone, but I can see how that would be creepy. Now for the third story. On that one, if I was in the position of the person writing the story, I could see how that would be very scary because you don't know what the disease was going to make that person do. Trying to put myself in the other person's shoes, the way I would see it is you were his best friend, so you were probably helping him through a lot of his issues he was trying to deal with. You having to work more, which wasn't any fault of your own, might have put him back in a depression where he was thinking, why take the medicine if no one wants to hang out with me anyways? Now that would send him back down into his downward spiral, and you wouldn't know what the disease would make him do. When it comes to these stories like this, a lot of the time, it's not the person you're afraid of, it's more or less the disease that's in their mind controlling the person. As you had stated, you were really good friends for a couple of months. That's actually the person he was supposed to be. This chemical imbalance in his head fucked it up a little bit, so he kind of got shafted on that shit, just like a lot of people. I hope he ended up getting the help he needed. He just needed to stay on his medication and have a good tight group of friends. If you would like to share your own story, I'll have all the information on how to do so in the description. I hope you all had a great Friday the 13th, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.